Okay, hello and welcome to our PowerPoint on sound devices. This is me from the past. I hope Monday is treating you well and you had a great weekend. Hooray! Let's do this thing. All right, so our first question is, what are sound devices exactly? Sound devices are exactly what they sound like. They are tools used by poets to convey some sort of meaning or reinforce some element of their poetry. So, in addition to words and literary devices, etc., in poetry, we also have to be on the lookout for sounds. So, you should be like our dear clip art friend here, listening for these wonderful things and thinking about how they work to create meaning. We're going to talk about 5 sound devices today. These are obviously not the only sound devices that exist in the world, but they are a good start. This video is going to take us through what these definitions are, looking at some examples, etc. And then the other video that you're going to watch today will be me explaining the Raven and how the sound devices affect that poem, or help to shape that poem, I should say. So these 5 devices I hope you are familiar with, since they are on our list of devices. But let's go ahead and jump into alliteration. So the official definition for alliteration is right up here at the top. It is a stylistic device, or more specifically, a sound device, in which a number of words having the same first consonant sound occur close together in a series. So we have our classic example here of Peter Piper, and then we see alliteration, of course, in all kinds of brand names, like Bed Bath & Beyond, for instance. We see them in tons of names, such as our dear friend here, SpongeBob SquarePants, with their repeated S at the beginning. This is, by the way, what SpongeBob SquarePants would look like if he took AP Lit. And we don't just see it in like little kids' rhymes and around the world, but our friend Shakespeare has used it as well. And this, of course, comes from Romeo and Juliet, and we can see the repeated initial F and L consonant sounds here. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. Hooray, alliteration, repeated sounds, beginning of words. Great. Let's talk now about consonants. So consonants is repeated consonants in words that are close together. And I found 3 examples from our friend Google Images. And you can see in these examples here, in the first one we have the repeated S sound, S being a consonant, meaning not a vowel, it's repeated, hooray. In the second example, we have the repeated M sound in mammals and clammy. And then in the last one, we have the repeated L sound in lazy, languid, line, and along. So you might be thinking now, isn't this the same thing as alliteration? We've got the L's at the beginnings, we've got the S at the beginning of words. What's going on here? The answer is no. Consonance is not the same thing as alliteration. It took me forever to figure out how to insert this symbol. Hooray for me, I figured it out. Let's take a look back. Here we have consonants, we have the repeated L sound, and some of these L's you can see are at the beginning of words, but then we have this word along here, and we can still count, so to say, this L sound, even though it's in the middle of the word, if it is consonants. In alliteration, it is purely at the beginning of the words. All right, so alliteration, repeat at the beginning, consonants, repeated consonant sounds anywhere in the word. And then we have our dear friend assonance, which is similar to consonants in that it's repeated sounds, but rather than repeated consonant sounds, it's repeated vowel sounds. So we have a couple of examples here. We can see the double E in the first example. The engineer held the steering wheel, or gosh, not even wheel. The engineer held the steering to steer the vehicle. Wonderful. We've got repeated U sounds here in the second example. And then we've got some repetition in, that's my dog if you can hear that weird noise. Come here. Then we've got some repeated vowel sounds here from our dear friend Robert Frost. Take a second to look over that. Okay, pause if you need more time because we're moving on. So basically, if we are boiling down the fancy definitions to something simple I can put into a chart, alliteration is repeated consonant sounds at the beginning of words. Consonance is repeated consonant sounds anywhere in the words. And assonance is repeated vowel sounds anywhere in the words. Hooray. Two more devices to talk about that I promised you. Euphony and cacophony. These are more subjective sound devices. It's pretty easy to look at a piece of paper and point out, okay, here are repeated consonants or here are repeated vowels. Euphony and cacophony are a little bit different. So if we break down the word euphony here, this EU by itself means good or pleasant. And the PHON can mean sound or voice. So put them together, folks. Euphony means good sounds. Good, pleasant, musical sounding poetry. You could describe the euphony of the poem if it sounds nice and pleasant to you. The opposite of that is, of course, cacophony, which would be bad sounds. If it sounds jarring and stressed and all over the place and gross, you could describe the cacophony of the poem. So now that we have gone through those 5 terms and know a little bit more about sound devices in general, we can define them, we can perhaps identify them, but we need to, of course, go beyond that and think about our overarching question, which is always our question: why do poets use these things? What is the effect? Okay, great. I can notice some alliteration here. I notice the assonance in Robert Frost's poem, but what effect does that create? So, like I said, we're going to look at the Raven together. Before you watch the next video, however, I want you to read through the Raven, TP-dast it, like you would do to get ready for a Poetry Thursday. Be ready to tell me, or I'm not there, tell yourself literally what is happening in the poem, and then we will study the effect of these sound devices together. Hooray.